Since I have now officially graduated college, or university, as I would say, um, I thought I would make a video where I discuss my experience, I guess. Um, it's content, right? It's content, whatever. Uh, I'll start off by talking about sort of my general experience, and then I'll go over like a highlight reel of some fun or interesting stuff that happened. So, obviously with COVID, I wasn't actually at college or at uni. I don't know why I'm calling it college. I've been watching too many American YouTubers. Uh, I wasn't actually at uni for that much of being at uni. A lot of it was online or whatever. But also, I didn't go to a lot of classes because, in uni, just like how I've always thought school should be, like uni is more about self study than anything else. And thankfully, my course doesn't have attendance requirements. So, really, as long as you hand the assignments in, that's all that matters. Like, as long as you get the assignments done to a good standard, you're fine. And that really suited me very well. Now, unfortunately, no matter how much I tried to convince my mum of that, uh, you know, she understandably thought, you're paying for this, you should fucking go in every day when you can. Like, don't skip. And honestly, that's perfectly understandable attitude to have. But the biggest problem is twofold. Firstly, it requires getting up at the same time every day, something that I am not good at. And it's made harder by the fact that, well, at school is every single day of the, well, 5 days out of the week. So for those 5 days, you get up at the same time. It was still difficult for me to maintain a sleep cycle, but not impossible. I was still tired from most of my time at school, but it wasn't that bad. But uni was only 3 days a week, all day for 3 days a week. So um, basically, I would get like out of whack in between those days. I was very tired. It would be not unusual for me to go in on 4 hours of sleep or less. Multiple times I went in with literally no sleep at all, like just stayed up all night to get to uni and then collapse as soon as I get home and go to sleep. That happened a few times, which I think probably didn't help very much with retaining information from the classes, but this leads me on to the other reason why going in wasn't really super interesting or great for me, which is that it was all fucking useless. Like, no, I learned very little. I learned a lit. I mean, you can't spend 3 years in university studying music and not learn anything about music. Like, I learned some things, and I even learned a couple of things that are genuinely useful, like a few mixing like tips that I use regularly. The biggest thing I learned in uni that I actually changed the way I produce completely was really just not a part of the course, just like an aside that a professor mentioned one day, which is about mixing. I suppose I'll go into it. I'll just briefly explain it because it's not interesting if you don't know music production. Essentially, just an EQing technique where if you want to make a certain instrument not be particularly in lower frequencies, if you don't want to muddy them up, if you want, it's most useful with a kick and a bass guitar. So find the fundamental of the kick, and wherever the fundamental of the kick is, instead of boosting the kick, you can then go into the bass, and in the EQ of the bass, whatever the frequency of the fundamental of the kick is, make a notch and notch out the fundamental frequency of the kick, and then that frequency will punch through the bass better. And that works a lot, and I actually use that semi-regularly. So that was probably the most practical thing I learned from uni. But that aside, like, out of 3 years, most of the stuff, especially in the first, like, 2 years, was pretty fucking, I wouldn't say useless, it's just that I already knew it. They don't assume that you already know how to produce. But I had been producing for like 6 years when I first went. So most of the stuff, a lot of the classes were like, here's the basics of how you use Ableton. Like, the first year was basically, here's how you use Ableton. And then I said, I already know how to use Logic perfectly well. And then the teachers were like, well, your final assessment says you can use whatever DAW you feel most comfortable with. So if you already know Logic, you can do your final assessment in Logic. This was the case throughout. There was never, in no of my, the only class that we had a requirement for specific software was to use Pro Tools for a certain section of a certain course. But Other than that, you could use whatever you wanted for anything. So I used Logic for everything, and the school computers had Logic on them. And so I never. It was everything was so easy for me. It was so fucking easy. It was almost It was like it was easier than the school I went to before, which I did a music like a BTEC in or whatever. It was easier than that at parts. Like it was ridiculously easy. Um, so I just didn't need to pay attention. Like I didn't need to go into class. I'd go into class and I'd just browse image boards, read, watch anime. Like yeah, there was on my laptop, and if some like no one's gonna stop you. It's not school. Like the teachers, it's not. They're not there to make you behave properly. They're there to just. If you don't, it's up to you. And so if you've made the decision that you think your time is better spent watching anime, then you can watch anime. I mean, they probably won't be happy about it, but you can do it if you want. Um, and the most hilarious example of this is there's one particular class. Actually, I'll talk about that later when I talk about the highlight reel of my time. Some of the more interesting things that happened. But so yeah, a lot of the classes were really boring, and whenever I could get away with it, I didn't go in. So there were whole terms where I just didn't go in at all, or went in very, very few times, and honestly missed very little because I'm a graduate. I graduated with a decent grade. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I got, but it wasn't a first. It's the one under like a first is the highest grade you can have. It's the one step below a first, which is unfortunate, but there's reasons for that, which I'll probably talk about as well. I probably could have gotten a first, but so anyway, so uni was meh. It was like going in, and the resource, like it wasn't like, oh, I really need to use the resources in the uni as well, because my uni wasn't really like super great. Like they weren't rich. They didn't have much equipment. They had some studios and stuff, but they only had two studios, and everyone studying music, everyone was access to the studios, so you have to book weeks in advance to get access to them. And I personally am more comfortable producing on headphones anyway, because that's what I'm used to. And I almost never have to record uh, drums, like live drums. I'm actually much more comfortable recording electronic drums, which is probably not a good thing, but basically I never booked the studios out in the whole time I was there. A lot of other people spent a lot of time in the studios, but I was completely not interested in it. I thought there was no advantage that using the uni's studios gave me, and so I never did. Although, except a couple of times when I'd be bored between classes, and I would look around, and there would be no one in the recording areas of the studios, because obviously the studio is split up into the like the mixing part where there's you do studio stuff, you produce it, and the recording area where you can record instruments and stuff. Um, and they have drum kits, and I like playing drums whenever I have the chance to, so I would go in and play some drums a couple of times. But yeah, never really used that outside of lessons when we would go and use that. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I didn't really spend that much time at uni, and then obviously COVID happened, so then no one was spending any time at uni, and I very rarely actually went on the Zoom calls because by that time, I it was stupid. It was fucking stupid. The couple of times I did go on the Zoom calls, it was completely asinine bullshit that they were talking about. So, you know, my point being, it was a waste of money because I didn't learn shit. Partially because I didn't go in, but I didn't go in because I went in for most of the first year and learned fuck all, and decided most of the teachers probably knew less than me. Not all of them. Some of the teachers were actually really great. One in particular who I thought was very knowledgeable and intelligent, and she made really cool, like, artsy experimental sound art music, and it was very, very cool. We had a few very interesting conversations about music. But apart from her, most of them people were kind of, it's kind of hard to describe, like, very industry type people who are like producers from the sort of old guard of producers, not the modern, like, self-taught um, brand of producers who are actually getting successful in the industry today. Sort of old guard, like, this is how you do things, this is the way that works, like, you can be creative and do your own stuff, but we're here to teach you the way that works, the way that it's always been done, and once you know that, then you can go off and do your own stuff and experiment, and that's okay, but we have to make sure we drill you on, this is the proper way to do it, and they were very much like that. And I don't even necessarily think that's a bad thing. Like, uh, yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, and I think a lot of people would have gotten a lot more out of it if I didn't already know the proper way to do things. In a lot of cases, not in every case. Like, I'm not the best at miking up a drum kit, but in a lot of cases, I already knew the proper way to do things, and so yeah. So the other thing is that my whole life, my parents have been telling me like, oh, don't worry, particularly my dad. So, because most of my dad's friends, he met at uni and is still friends with them. And he basically told me, like, don't worry about anything because you make your real friends at uni and those will be the friends that you sort of have for life. Didn't make a friend. Not a single one. I have some acquaintances, some people I'm friendly with. Uh, I talked to a couple of people. Um, but no, I didn't make a single friend, really. I barely talked to anyone. Went into class, left class, it wasn't a big deal. And this wasn't out of like a um, fear or social anxiety or anything. Like, ever since I went on that SSRI, my social anxiety is actually way down than how it used to be. Um, like as in talking to people and stuff, I don't care so much anymore. Particularly talking to people I don't care, like strangers that I'm not trying to impress, like just regular people. If I'm talking to someone who I have a lot of respect for or something, then I'm gonna get nervous. But if I'm talking to a stranger who's just a random person, I'm not particularly bothered what they think about me, so I don't get particularly nervous um, anymore. Used to be different, but thankfully I've gotten better at that. And so yeah, it wasn't really anything to do with that. In fact, at the beginning of the first year, there were people who were very willing to talk to me, and we'd go get Greg's together and stuff. And then I was just like, I cannot fucking be bothered to try and maintain a friendship with you people. Like, you're fine, but you're not or you're not autists. You're just reasonable, like nice, fine, normal people. But I'm not particularly not nothing particularly valuable is going to come from being friends with you. So I just was like, I'm going to stop hanging out with you people, and so I just stopped hanging out with them, and it was basically fine. Perfectly happy. Yeah, so yeah, no friends made at uni, but I don't really mind that. Like, it was, I guess, by choice. Um, I mean, maybe you could make the argument that if you actually tried to meet them and find out more about them, you'd find out they were really interesting, and I suppose that's true. But I kind of don't feel like I missed out on that much, particularly hearing the music that other people make. Like, you can kind of tell a lot about a person's personality from what music they like and what music they make. And people had really bad taste and really not very interesting. Like, just trap. Just everyone made trap. Everyone made fucking trap music or like really boring generic electronic music like EDM. That was it. There was no one make. There was a couple of people who made mildly. Like, even the metalheads had bad taste. There were a couple of metalheads in my year. Um, in some of my classes, there were a few people who were like clearly metalheads, and they made like death metal or really generic black metal. Um, so yeah, that was about it. And remember, at the time this was when I was getting ridiculously into like Throbbing Gristle. In my first year, I was like listening mostly to Throbbing Gristle, Shinsei Kamatsujin demos, and anything experimental I could find, and a lot of Vivaldi as well. Uh, so I was not fucking with these people at all. Anyway, so yeah, didn't really make any friends. That's fine. So I guess yeah, and then the rest of the year was just COVID, where I would occasionally go to a Zoom class, and it doesn't matter because they put the fucking at the beginning of the term, at the beginning of the module, as they call it, they put a like here's the assessment brief online, and you just do the assessment brief and hand it in, and then you pass that year. So like yeah, uh, there was no point where I was handing an assessment brief where I thought I can't already do this, except for one time where we had to. Well, I won't go into specifics because it's boring, but there was one thing where it's like you need to know a particular program, and I just looked up YouTube tutorials, and I got a good mark. So yeah, there was no point during the whole time where the assessments made me do something that I didn't already know how to do or couldn't very easily learn how to do outside of uni. Which I suppose is a good thing because it's supposed to be about independent study and sort of learning how to learn. But as an internet guy, I am pretty used to learning for myself and figuring out stuff for myself. Anyway, And I'll talk about some highlights, some interesting things. Highlights doesn't necessarily mean good things. So first, I'll talk about this one funny thing, or I suppose it's funny. It's kind of disappointing as well. So I think this was at the beginning of second year. I go into one of my classes. I don't remember what this class was, but I go in, and it's my first lecture with this teacher that I haven't had before, lecturer that I haven't had before. And basically he comes in, and the entire lesson is him giving a lecture about, to summarize, you might want to make art, but actually you should just sell out. And even the stigma against selling out is like really bad and just here to hold back black people down. And he basically said that almost exactly. Like, it's just there to hold black people down. And you should just sell out at every opportunity. Don't let the stigma from selling out distract you from getting money, because if you get money, you'll be able to afford trainers like my trainers. And then everyone went, whoa, look at these trainers. And they looked exactly like every other pair of trainers I've ever seen. So that was that class. And then after that, I didn't even I actually walked out before it ended. And then I thought to myself, if I ever see that guy again, I'm gonna punch him in the face. Like, if I have to sit through another lecture from this guy telling me what the fuck to do, I am just gonna start arguing with him, because I'd already done that in the previous year, because one of the teachers was trying to tell us how great copyright was, and I just started arguing with him. Yeah, I just didn't go to a single other one of his classes. I just never went to a single one of his classes through the whole year, and I got a fucking first on the assessment for his class. I probably did better than everyone who actually went to most of the people. Anyway, I just thought that was funny, that I didn't go to a single one of his classes because he was a fucking idiot, and I got the highest mark you can get. So yeah, that was funny. It wasn't particularly difficult. I'm not bragging about getting the highest. It was a pretty easy class. It's fucking music. It's fucking music production. They're all easy. Like, if you go to music production school and you already know how to make music, even in a basic level, you're gonna pass easy. It's not difficult. So yeah, that was one funny thing. Then another funny thing that happened just before COVID. So it was right at the end of term, on the last term when we actually went into the building, onto the campus. I somehow ended up talking about anime with a person, and he was like, we were talking about our favorite anime, and obviously me being an idiot, I can't hold myself back. So he was like, my favorite anime is Clannad After Story, and I was like, instead of being like, oh, nice, I was like, I didn't really like that much. I thought it was kind of boring. I have a lot of problems with keys at work, blah, blah. I fucking started rambling like that because I can't hold myself back when it's about anime. And he was like, have you seen Monogatari? And I said, I love Monogatari. And he said, do you know the tongue twister? And I was like, I mean, I know, I've seen the scene. And he proceeded to perfectly do the fucking tongue twister from Black Hanakawa. Just like impeccably do it without even trying, and that was a beautiful moment in my life. Surprisingly, the high amount of people watched anime, but they all had pretty bad taste. I actually got invited by this one guy who knew I was kind of into anime, who said, like, we're doing a watch party for One Punch Man Season 2. Do you want to come to my house and watch One Punch Man Season 2, the first episode, when it comes out? And I said no, because I knew that because unlike everyone else, I actually follow the anime industry, and I knew that One Punch Man Season 2 wasn't going to be good before it came out, because I knew it was made by different people, and I'd been following everyone on the internet being like, One Punch Man Season 2 is going to be shit because it's made by different people. I already knew it before, I already knew it, so I was like, nah, I don't really want to go. And lo and behold, One Punch Man Season 2 wasn't very good. Well, I haven't seen it, but I've heard it wasn't very good, at least. So yeah, that happened. And that was kind of funny, I suppose. What else interesting things happened? That was probably about it. Nothing much particular. Oh yeah, there was one of the biggest highlights. This is probably the biggest highlight in how terrible this was, because this is actually a low light of my life. So some of you may know that I was put on SSRIs voluntarily for I was sick of being depressed, and I was like, fuck it, anything to get out of this. I'll even try SSRIs. So I went to the doctor and got SSRIs, sertraline, and if you want to see what they did to me, you can look at the video Sertraline Sermons, I believe it's called, and you can see how nuts I was in that period. In fact, that whole period of video, I am just clearly a bit nuts and manic. And the reason is because it turns out, although I didn't know this at the time, I don't have depression, I have bipolar. And the one thing you don't do with a bipolar person is give them SSRIs, because it causes a manic episode. Or it can, it just makes whatever is currently, it makes it worse. You don't do it. When I was diagnosed with bipolar, they gave me a sheet of like information, and the one big thing it said in like big letters is don't take SSRIs. So they didn't know this at the time, so I was diagnosed with depression and given SSRIs, or low mood. I don't even know if they called it depression, but I was given SSRIs, and I just went completely nuts for like however long I was on it. It's all a blur to me. All I remember is like a couple of things. One of them is Notre Dame burning down, and me just like uncontrollably evil laughing, like manic laughing, watching a live stream of Notre Dame burning down while blasting Burzum in the background. That was pretty funny. I made some fun videos, which are a little weird to look back on, and I started chewing my t-shirts uncontrollably and have never been able to stop since. This is a side effect. If you ever wondered why all my t-shirts, you can't really see it in this light, but if you ever, you've seen all my other videos, you ever wondered why all my t-shirts have big holes, like right here? It's because after going on sertraline, it just made me want to chew things, and so I just started chewing my t-shirts, and then even when I got off of it, it was just a permanent habit stuck in my brain now, and so now I just chew my t-shirts, even though I've been trying my best to stop. So yeah, but the other fun thing that happened is pretty scary stuff happened to my. So remember how I said that after I went off SSRIs, I didn't have social anxiety problems? Well, while I was on SSRIs, I was manic and had zero social anxiety, even when I should have probably had social anxiety. So one of the things that happened is, let me see what happened. So I was in class, and someone's. Sorry about that. Where was I? Okay, so I was in class, and I was reading on my laptop, Mark Fisher's hauntology thing, where he wrote about hauntology, and I was reading that in class, and meanwhile the teacher was trying to show us some like interesting music that wasn't like, I don't really remember, but anyway, we ended up watching like some funk, people making like callback to like funk, and I just started like trying to argue with the teacher, like in front of the whole class, about like, don't you think it's bad to just recreate past genres like hauntology? Like, don't you think that's a bad, like, I don't. It's so embarrassing looking back on it. I didn't realize that I thought I was like pretty. Oh, I'm so epic and intellectual right now, and I walked out of the class and immediately was like, why did I do that? I was so confident. It's like I'm on cocaine or something. Just so confident that everything I was saying was right. And even when I walked out of the class, I was like, oh wait, I probably shouldn't have done that. So that happened. I had basically the teacher clearly was like, maybe we can have this discussion after class, and I was like, no, let's do it now. And anyway, it was bad. Another time that happened is the Christchurch shooting happened not so long ago, and I went into class, and in class the teacher brought up something about LGBT stuff. It's a fucking art school. What do you expect? And I like basically said, I stood up and I just said, look, if you are LGBT, you should get yourself a gun to defend yourself, because as we've seen in New Zealand, the right don't fucking play around. They will just kill you. So if you're LGBT, get a gun. 3D print a gun. Come to me. I will tell you how to 3D print a gun, is what I said. I don't know how to 3D print a gun. I mean, I don't own a 3D printer or anything like that. I don't know anything about guns. I don't know, no one did it. But I don't know why I said that. The teacher like looked at me and wasn't sure what to say, because like I think he kind of agreed. He might have kind of agreed with me, or thought like, that's kind of a fair thing to say, but like he didn't say anything. I don't know why I did that. That was not smart. those are the two things I did. I was like, if you were LGBT, 3D print yourself a gun to defend yourself. And I said, so, the stuff about hauntology. There was also a time in first year where I had an argument, as I said, with the teacher about copyright. But that was not really much of an argument. It was more of just a quick discussion before he quickly moved on because I was questioning his worldview. He was a lawyer, by the way. That was the class about legal stuff to do with music. So yeah, obviously going to be very pro-copyright because that's what makes him money. There was another time in another class where the teacher was talking about like metal and like metal subgenres or something and just didn't know what the fuck she was talking about. She clearly didn't. And all of the people who were like me and the three other metalheads or two or three other metalheads basically just like she just started asking us questions at a certain point to explain to the class because she would ask questions obviously and people would put their hands up and it was always us and things sort of spiraled and eventually we were just teaching a class about the history of metal just impromptu and I was just like, so here's the story of Burzum. So there was this guy Varg Vikernes and he killed someone with an axe and went to jail and now he makes YouTube videos. I think that was pretty funny. That was kind of a highlight reel moment. Although I don't really remember because I think I was just really tired the whole time. I was so tired the whole time in uni when I actually had to fucking go into class. I was so tired all the time. Yeah, I'd say that was a pretty comprehensive view. Overall, was it worth it? Well, for various circumstances outside of the actual academic process, it might have been worth it. So, keeping my family happy, basically, which is not a good reason to go to uni if you can't afford. If it's not, if you don't, especially if you live in America, where everything's like ridiculously expensive. Don't do that if you live in America. Don't get yourself into debt for life. Don't do that. If you live in a place where it's free or cheap, then and you can get away and it doesn't have attendance requirements, maybe it'll be worth it. I don't know. It depends what courses you do, depends what uni, it obviously varies, but for someone like me, I wouldn't say I particularly enjoyed it. But on the other hand, it did force me to write my dissertation, which is the best thing I've ever written, and that was pretty good. But then on the other hand, my dissertation, despite getting a incredibly high mark, again, okay, this time I am bragging. The other time I wasn't bragging, this time I am bragging. My dissertation got a very, very good mark. 85%, which is very, very good in the UK. The way grading works in the UK is very different from America. So like, I think like 40% is a pass, and then I think 75 is a first. So that's like the highest grade you can get, and then anything above that is still a first, but just a really, really solid first. So like an 80 would be considered like a very good grade. So an 85 is like a sort of maybe one student gets that in a year type of situation. Like that's a very, very high grade. And I got that for my dissertation and I'm very proud of myself for doing that because I did it all in 9 days and it was a lot of fucking work. I read like 3 books. It was a lot of work. I'll just put it that way. It was a lot of work to get that dissertation done and I'm very happy that it came out and I got a really good grade for it. Thankfully, not the opposite of thankfully, unfortunately, didn't count for shit because that year, that whole term, that whole thing was actually a 2-part assessment. So it was, the dissertation was one part and the other part was, are you ready? A 15-minute PowerPoint presentation over Zoom. That was it. So one of them is a like 8,000 word dissertation, which I know is not that much for a dissertation, but as you might actually know, so that might sound like piss easy to you, but as you might actually know if you've ever tried to write something like that, it's actually really difficult to like. I could have easily written like 20,000 words. It's difficult to limit your when you have to. It's no longer about like all of your life doing essays, you're trying to pad to reach the word limit, and suddenly you have something where you have so much to talk about and so much research done, and you have to fit it into this tiny 8,000 word chunk. It's actually really difficult. I actually went over by like almost the maximum you're allowed to go over. I also wrote it all in Vim and LaTeX, which was based, in my opinion. It made me get a lot better at Vim and learn LaTeX, so that was fun as well. Um, so yeah, the dissertation was probably the best thing. But yeah, all of that effort, editing it down to doing all the research, actually writing it, etc., and all the amazing, incredible, genius ideas that I have in that research paper, or whatever you want to call it. Because I'm a genius. I should put that up on the internet somewhere. I'll remove my name and put it up. I don't know where to put it though. All of that aside, it was basically invalidated by the fact that there was this fucking 15-minute PowerPoint presentation, which of course I fucked up because I got nervous and didn't practice very much because all of my time was being spent working on the dissertation, and I also slightly misinterpreted the brief, and also what the brief actually wanted out of me was a bit ridiculous. It's something that I thought, like, they can't be any way they actually mean that, and they did actually mean that. So I didn't do that. I still passed. In fact, I got like a second, but it dragged my whole. Basically, the PowerPoint dragged down. So okay, so those two things, the dissertation and the PowerPoint, were each 50% of the mark, which I don't think I really thought through very well. So the fact that I didn't do that well on the PowerPoint meant that even though I did really well in the dissertation, my overall mark was dragged down to be just under a first, like 2 points under a first, I think. And that got me so mad that I decided, okay, fuck you, or I'm not going to try on any of the other work because you're just going to bullshit me. If you're going to bullshit me like this, it is not worth the fucking effort to try super hard just to get dragged. So I just basically gave up at that point because there was 2 other things that I had to do, and I was just like, fuck you, I'm not trying really hard on these. I'm just going to bang them out in a couple days each and, not try. And so I did that, and as expected, didn't get the world's greatest marks. I mean, I got decent marks, but not like firsts. I probably could have gotten much better marks if I'd like really put as much effort into everything as I did the dissertation. But I thought, thinking about it, I was like, they'll probably value the academic looking thing more than the non-academic. It was a bit stupid, but also like legitimate, because you two would be very angry if you'd put as much effort into something as you did and got marked down. So I just got so angry that I decided then and there I refuse to ever put any effort into this school that doesn't give a fuck about me. Because the uni, now I don't know that much about what they did, but from talking to other students, it seems like the uni was really fucking people over in certain ways, which I don't want to go into, mostly because I don't really know the full story and I don't want to give people a false picture of what was going on, because I didn't talk to that many people. But it seemed like a lot of people had a lot of problems with this uni. Like, a lot of people left at a certain point because they had like citing issues with the administration and stuff. So a lot of people had a lot of problems with this uni, and after that happened, I was just like, fuck you, I'm not giving you the benefit of my effort, and refused to try particularly hard in any of the other work. And that's why I didn't get a overall first. I probably could have if I'd really tried, but I didn't think it was worth it. And honestly, I'm kind of happy with that decision because I don't think that a first would have been worth the suffering that it would have caused me to get a first. So yeah, that is my uni experience. What the fuck is this in my... What is that? The dust or something, I don't know. But anyway, that's my uni experience. Thanks for watching. Do I say that at the end of videos? I don't know.